Today I'm making one of my favorites, plant-based meat style raviolis. There's a couple of steps to make this. You have to make a filling, you have to make a sauce, and you have to make the shell or pasta that goes with it. So we're gonna start with the meat filling because that needs about 30 minutes to fully hydrate. So what's on the list? What do we need?
We're starting with a half a cup of TVP, which is textured vegetable protein.
There really isn't a whole lot of substitutes for this product in this product. If you have a soy sensitivity, you might want to avoid this one. That's all I can say.
And you want to make sure that you're using the small granular style rather than the big chunky style.
Yep, it should look kind of like, I don't know, Rice Krispies, sort of.
Next is for color, and that's 1 teaspoon of beetroot powder.
Now, beetroot powder is for color, but it does add a touch of flavor too, not a lot.
1 tablespoon of methyl cellulose.
Methyl cellulose acts as the binder, it makes it all stick together.
Now, as this is a meat replacement, we want to have protein in there. So we're gonna put some protein in there.
This is pea protein powder?
Yes, it is.
Okay, how much?
1 tablespoon. Now, for one of my favorite things, a teaspoon of mushroom seasoning.
This is literally ground up dried mushrooms. It's a great addition to many savory style dishes. It adds a nice umami.
A tablespoon of nutritional yeast.
Also, seasoning adds a lot of umami.
And of course, this wouldn't be a recipe if it didn't have garlic powder and onion powder. 1 teaspoon each.
Not sure which is which, but they both go in.
1 teaspoon dried basil.
You can actually use the herbs of your choice. Oregano is good. I just tend to like basil in my meat raviolis.
A half cup water.
Okay, I'm not gonna use the whole half cup. I'm gonna put in a little bit first and then test it. I know there's a couple other ingredients here too, so let's put those in first.
A tablespoon of low sodium soy sauce.
Do you have to use low sodium? No, but it's probably better for you if you do. It adds flavor and a little bit of salt.
And this is supposed to be half of a tablespoon of white wine vinegar, but I eyeballed it, and my eyeballing isn't as good as Brian's eyeballing.
It's mostly okay. We'll just use that much of it. And a little bit, when we do have a half cup of water here, I'm probably gonna use half of that to start, and now I need something to mix it with. Be right back. I know, I could have mixed up all the dry stuff first, but it doesn't really matter, because I'm gonna mix everything together. Okay, this is too dry. Notice how it's not really coming together. It should look kind of pasty, all right? So I'm just gonna put in half of what's left of the water. The trick is, you can always add more water, but it's really hard to take it away. Those of you who watched my burger video will probably recognize this recipe as it's pretty much the same thing. Might be just a touch more soy sauce. Get a little more flavor into these. Okay, that's looking really good. See how it looks kind of like a minced meat or a chopped meat? I just want to mix that through real good, make sure everything is well combined and homogeneous. I just like to say homogeneous. I'm sorry, the glass bowl makes a lot of noise, but it's the easiest way for you to see. Interestingly enough, it even starts to smell like the seasoned filling that you would put into a ravioli. I mean, that's just cool. What do we do with this now?
We're gonna let it sit.
About 30 minutes. That lets the methyl cellulose completely absorb as well as the TVP. So, to the side.
We're gonna get started on our sauce, and today we have chosen a really simple sauce. It's basically just onions, herbs, and butter.
And oil.
Of course, we're using vegan butter because we don't eat the other stuff.
Plant-based channel. But I'm gonna start with 1 whole onion, and I'm just going to cut this into, thin, long strips. Basically, we're going to caramelize this onion. So I just want, the half moons or whatever people call it, I don't know. Into a pan, put to low heat, like lowish. It's 2 out of 10 on ours. I'm going to put in some vegan butter. How much? Probably about 2 tablespoons of vegan butter. Once the butter starts to melt a bit, going to add in our onions. Grab my tongs and start moving them around, break them up a little bit. You can add a touch of salt. However, I know that our vegan butter has a little bit of salt in it. That'll help get some of the moisture out. what we're really doing is we're caramelizing these onions. I mean, if you've done that before, you know exactly what to do. The butter adds some flavor, makes them nice, you know, that whole unctuous thing. And this takes a little while, like half an hour or more. So we're just gonna let this go while we continue on with the rest of the process. You gotta put that filling into something. And today we're going to be making a pasta. Now, in the past, I would have used eggs and flour and water to make this pasta, but we don't use eggs anymore. So we're just gonna make a simpler flour water pasta. What do I need for that?
You need 1 cup all-purpose flour. Today we're using King Arthur. We really enjoy the King Arthur brand because we feel it is a nicer quality flour than any of the other flours that we've used.
Right. Other people have told me about various flours that they've used along the way. Use whatever flour you're most comfortable with. Semolina would also be a good choice, just so you're aware. It would actually make a little bit of a more chewy kind of pasta. Really, really fantastic for that. It's just a little harder to work with, but not that much.
Now we have half a cup of water here, but we don't necessarily need to use that full half a cup. So
Right.
Brian is going to add as needed and and then knead it to see until it gets the right consistency. We're
But I'm
looking for
gonna get a
something-
spoon to start mixing this first before I use my hands.
And the consistency you're looking for is silky smooth.
Yes, silky smooth. All right, like she said, I won't be using all the water most likely. I'm gonna put in about half. I always like to do that. That way I can always put more in. Otherwise, I have to add more flour and then I'm gonna end up with too much pasta. So we don't wanna go that way.
We're speaking from experience.
Yep, happens to me all the time. But this does not look right. See how it's just like a crumbly mess, it's not there. So I'm just gonna put in like another tablespoon and mix again. I mean, if you've ever made handmade pasta before, this is what you're doing, same thing. Looks like I have the right consistency. Let me just get a board so I can start kneading this. You know, when you get to that point, you just kind of put it out on the pan, board, table, whatever you want to use. Pan, you don't use a pan. See, that's the thing, you know, when you're trying to talk to a camera and you're doing stuff at the same time, you get your mix all tucked up. I mean, I do it all the time, and you're probably used to that by now. See, I even missed some crumbs.
Just leaving.
And I just want to incorporate everything into the dough ball. Notice how it's not really sticking to the board. That's how you know that you have approximately the right amount of water and texture to it. It's starting to get a little bit tacky, so that means we might need a dusting of flour. See, there's all kinds of stuff here. So let's get a dusting of flour. And I'll go over my kneading technique once we get to that, because I don't want this to stick all over the board. That should be good. What I do is I push down and smear it kind of, then I fold it over and smear it again. So it's that constant folding and smearing technique. I should get a t-shirt that says the fold and smear. People will go, what the heck?
So the smear, as he refers to it, is actually stretching the dough. And so it is a kneading, folding technique. Mm-hmm. We've actually had some people say that's not how you do it. And then we've had traditional
Italian grandmas telling me this is how you do it.
That's exactly how you do it.
Where do you think I learned it from? You know. Anyway, so what we're doing is we're activating the gluten in the dough. If you do not have access to like a pasta press kind of pasta rollers or something, then you want to knead this for like a full 10 minutes. If you do have access to one though, you can just let it come together, give it a couple minutes in kneading, and then you should be fine, okay? I'm just gonna stop about there. We do have, and you know what, we need another dusting here because we're getting ready to roll this out. See, I probably could have done with a little bit less water, but it's hard to come together if you don't have enough water too. So what I'm gonna do is cut this into 4 pieces, and we're gonna roll this out using our roller, okay? If you don't know how to do that, well, that's a whole other video, really. So I'm gonna show you that off camera because our mixer's like way over there and it would be complicated. All right, so our meat mixture's been sitting for a little while and it is obviously stiffened up. That's what we want it to do. You want it to get like that, just like that, so it's like ground meat and nice and yeah. Good. Okay, I rolled out a piece of the dough. If you do not have the roller thing, they make cheap pasta machines. They're like 20 bucks. That's a really effective way to do it. If you don't have that, you do have a rolling pin or a wine bottle. Take some time and a little elbow grease, but you can roll it out. You want it really, really thin. Basically, I mean, like that's probably 1/16 of an inch thin. I like my raviolis a little on the thick side.
On our roller attachment, we got it to
4. the trick now is we're gonna assemble these. I'm gonna square off my dough. Do not throw these away. It's perfectly usable dough still. Don't do that. I'm just gonna square off both ends, and I wanna mark pretty much the way I'm gonna place my dough. So if I look at this, I can go 1, 2, 3, 4. I can get 4 raviolis out of this, right? So what I'm gonna do is get in here. A little water on your fingers is always helpful. I'm just gonna grab a little dab of meat mixture. It's not really meat, but you know what I mean.
Stuffing.
The stuffing, yes, the stuffing mixture. Good job. And I'm gonna place that right over the little indentation that I made. Notice, not a lot, just a little bit, because if you overfill it, it doesn't work so well. They just kind of explode. Okay, once I have them in there, I'm just gonna dab a little water on my finger, just kind of press them down a little bit, make like a disc instead of a round, and I feel like I need to wipe my hands. I'll be right back. Now, what I need to do is put a little glue on here. So I'm gonna dip my finger, dip my finger, yeah, in the water, and just kind of go around everybody. Just in between, around the edge, just like that. Then take this flap and lay it over the top of it, right, just like that, and then come through and poke out all the air. That's the real secret, is get rid of all the air around these guys. Start from the back and move forward. You could do like curled fingers, works pretty good. I used to do something like that, like I'd do a half moon with my hand. That seems to work pretty well one side, and then you come back over with the other side. But you just wanna get it all sealed up nice and good. All right, so now I have a sheet of ravioli, right? So I just wanna clean up the edges a little bit. And again, you don't throw these away. You use it for the next one. And I'm just gonna make them nice and neat. There are a lot of ways to actually make ravioli. Like we have the clamshell things that work really nice too. I found that for the plant-based ones, this works a little better. I like to have a little bit less filling in them. They seem more convincing. And then I'm just gonna cut right smack through the middle. And what you wanna do after you've cut them is inspect. Make sure you got all the air bubbles. See, there was a little air in that one. You wanna make sure all 4 sides are nicely sealed, and there's your ravioli. Again, inspect, get that little air bubble out, push the air bubbles out, seal all 4 sides. If you don't have them sealed, when you put them in the hot water, they can go and explode. I'm gonna finish the rest of these up, and then we'll get back to cooking them. Okay, so after what, maybe like 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so, we have exactly 24 beautifully, well, mostly beautifully shaped raviolis. The last couple always come out a little, you know.
They're artisanal.
Yeah, let's go with that. By the way, this recipe does work out really, really well. I had literally just a tiny little like gumball size piece of pasta left over. I'm sure had I made them just slightly larger or something, they would have worked out fine. At this point though, you can take this entire tray as it is. By the way, we just took a cookie sheet lined with parchment. We might not have mentioned that earlier. And that way they don't stick. You don't want them on top of each other. If you need multiple rows, you make multiple layers and that kind of thing. You can stick this right in the freezer as is, give these a few hours to totally freeze, then you put them in a bag and you can pull one out at a time as you need them. They cook about the same amount of time frozen or fresh. I can't figure that one out, but it really is about the same. Maybe 8 to 9 minutes in boiling water. We are going to just put these to the side for the moment and finish our sauce. And to make that sauce, we already have the onions going, and I did add a little bit of olive oil. They're kind of nicely browned. We'll show you those in a minute, but we're going to be adding something unique, and that is fresh sage, right from the garden, by the way. And what I'm going to do with it is just kind of pick off the leaves, because you don't really want the stems. They're kind of, you know, just, you don't really want to eat the stems.
There's something about the combination of this butter browned, they call it brown butter, right? When they brown the butter.
Yeah, but it's caramelized onions, really.
It's really the caramelized onions and the sage. That combination is just fantastic with ravioli. Now, if you choose to go for an oil-free version, of course you can use a marinara style sauce with these particular ravioli, and that'll be delicious as well.
Don't need a lot. I mean, I have like, what's that, like half a cup or so? And I'm just gonna slice them into like little ribbons. because they get a little almost like leathery if they're too big.
Another thing that you can add to this particular sauce that we aren't going to today, but you can if you choose, is if you have your favorite plant-based bacon, brown some of that up and toss that in along with the onions and the sage, and it's delicious.
But for now, I'm just gonna take this and add it right to the pan with the onions in it. By the way, at this point, you want to get some water boiling in a rather large pot, big enough to hold all these, or as many as you plan to cook. Okay, so we have the sage in here, but it's looking a little on the dry side, so I'm gonna take just a touch of olive oil, maybe like a tablespoon or two, and throw it in there and start mixing that around. At this point, I'm gonna start seasoning this as well. And for that, I'm gonna use black pepper. Just a pretty good smattering of black pepper in there and mix that through. That's looking pretty good. You wanna not crisp up the sage, but you wanna make sure that it's kind of saturated and cooked down a little bit. They do soften slightly, so that's what we're looking for. Once your water has come to a boil, start placing your ravioli in carefully. You want them to not really stick to each other, so be careful when you're putting them in. Try not to put them right on top of each other. I am gonna cook all of these because, well, you know, we like raviolis. Once all of your raviolis are in though, you wanna drop the heat a bit. Like on ours, we tend to go to like 7 or so out of 10 because you don't want a super violent boil when you're cooking these, and you wanna cook them for about 7 or 8 minutes. It doesn't really take a super long time, and that's whether they're fresh or frozen. All right, and once the time is up and your raviolis are all floating to the surface, look how lovely they are. Just scoop them out, try to leave the water behind because you don't really want the water for this one, and put them into the pan. And once they're in the pan, gently try to just move them around a little bit so they don't stick on top of each other. Get some of that, we call it a sauce, but it's really not even a sauce. It's more like a, I don't know, a side dressing kind of thing. Get some of that moving around. If you need, which I do in this case, take a little bit of olive oil and just kind of drizzle it over the top. You might need like a teaspoon or two. Yeah, maybe a tablespoon, just to make them not stick. I just have the heat on very, very low, just to try to incorporate everything through. But in the plating is when you're really gonna be able to get all this where it needs to be. So let's get these on the plate.
So at this point, if you want, and if you've watched our video and you've made some, you can top it with some shaky cheese, aka vegan Parmesan cheese.
It's a really good thing to do. Adds a little bit of a saltiness. It's reminiscent of Parmesan cheese. This smells incredible. The sage and onion together is amazing. And then mixed with the pasta, this is one of my favorite things. No recipe video would be complete without a taste test. So let's do that, shall we? And just to show you what they look like inside, let's do a slow-mo.
Quel cappello leggero galante, quella chioma, quell'aria brillante, quel vermiglio d'onesco color, quel vermiglio d'onesco color. Non più frai quei pennacchini, quel cappello, quella chioma.
So when you cut into it, you got the nice firm texture of the pasta, and then the meat looks just like a meat ravioli. Get a little bit of the oils and onions and sage. Take a bite.
Non chiudrai farfalloni amoroso, notte giorno di torno.
I say the word incredible often. This is spectacular. This is just so amazingly good.
Everything works together so well with the different textures, the different flavors, the different colors. Everything that you really want to have in a really good meal is here.
Yeah, absolutely. So go ahead and make these. Like we said earlier, you can freeze these before you cook them. Once they're cooked, I'd store them in the fridge for a few days, up to a week. But in the freezer, indefinitely, pretty much. As long as you put them into a plastic bag after they're frozen, okay? Don't just leave them on the tray because they'll just dry out and get really brittle. So once they're in a bag, indefinite in the freezer.
I'll have the ingredients list and all the links to the other recipes that we mentioned in the comments below.
And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching and have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Delle belle turbando a riposo, ma ci set tua dolcino d'amor.